Good evening, and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. My name is Ryan Davis, and I am the chair of the JFK Jr. Forum Committee here at the Institute of Politics. Before we begin, please note the exit doors, which are located on both the park side and the JFK Street side of the forum. In the event of an emergency, walk to the exit closest to you and congregate in the JFK Park. Please also take a moment now to silence your cell phones. You can join the conversation tonight online by tweeting with the hashtag BPC18 or with the hashtag Richmond Forum, which is also listed in your program. Please take your seats now and join me in welcoming our guests, Congressman Cedric Richmond, our moderator Symone Sanders, and co-chairs of the 2018 Black Policy Conference, Malcolm Temple and Shaniqua McClendon.
It's all you.
It's you. It's only you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Malcolm Temple, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the kickoff event for the 2018 Black Policy Conference. First, I'd like to acknowledge my fellow conference co-chairs, our panel managers, some who have traveled all the way from the University of Toronto to be here with us today, and the entire planning team for their hard work in pulling off this great conference. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. I'd also like to take this moment to thank the Institute of Politics for their collaboration, which helped make this event possible today. Yes, please clap. It was 13 years ago that the Black Policy Conference was started here at Harvard Kennedy School by members of the Black Student Union. Since then, the Black Policy Conference has grown to become one of the world's leading forums that brings together students, scholars, and policy practitioners to generate innovative solutions and sustainable ideas to solve pressing issues that are affecting the Black community. It's not lost on us that this year's conference falls on the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. 50 years since we lost a great leader who transformed race relations and equal rights for people of color in this country. Yet, despite the triumphs of Dr. King and other leaders of the civil rights movement, Black communities still grapple with many issues, some old, such as police brutality and the racial wealth gap, and some new, such as racial bias in the use of algorithms that inform public policy. This not only serves as our purpose for the conference this weekend, but it also begs the question, what does Black political leadership mean in the 21st century? And on that note, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Shaniqua McClendon, who will introduce our distinguished guest. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank everyone again for joining us this evening for the 14th Annual Black Policy Conference. We put a lot of work into this, and we're really excited that you can join us. Also, before I introduce Congressman Richmond, when we invited him, we initially wanted to create a more formal relationship with the Congressional Black Caucus and the Black Policy Conference. Harvard is a premier public policy school. The Congressional Black Caucus are leaders on black policy within the U.S. Congress, so we're hopeful that this will be the beginning of a long relationship. Congressman Cedric Richmond represents Louisiana's second congressional district in the United States House of Representatives. Cedric currently serves on the House Committee on Homeland Security and the House Committee on the Judiciary. Outside of the committee service, he is an active member of the Congressional Black Caucus and the New Democratic Coalition. As a member of the Committee on Homeland Security, Cedric works to ensure New Orleans and surrounding communities are adequately prepared for any emergency through oversight of the Federal Emergency Management Association. He also works to ensure the security of the nation's critical infrastructure, borders, and ports. As a member of the Committee on the Judiciary, the second oldest standing committee in Congress, Cedric works with committee members to exercise oversight responsibility for the U.S. Department of Justice and Homeland Security. Born and raised in New Orleans, Cedric is a strong believer in the value of mentorship in his hometown. He is a graduate of Benjamin Franklin High School, earned his undergraduate degree from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and his Juris Doctorate from the Tulane School of Law in New Orleans. Cedric is also a graduate of the Harvard University Executive Education Program at the John F. Kennedy School of Government. And just on a personal note, I, as many of you know, worked on the Hill for about 6 years, and in my last role was able to work with Congressman Richmond's office, and it's just really exciting to be able to have him here to demonstrate the leadership that he does on the Hill. And also, I really want to thank Symone. She has put in a lot of effort to help us pull off this conference, and I am very grateful to her for that. So with that, we will get started, and Congressman Richmond, you can kick us off. Thank you.
Well, first of all, Shanika, thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for your years on the Hill and the sacrifice you made in your way to make the CBC more productive, my office more credible and more productive. So thank you for all of that. Dean, thank you for having me today. And Malcolm, I'll pick up where you left off, and what I will say only in brief introduction comments. You talked about us celebrating or acknowledging the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King, who, by the way, was a Morehouse man. But if there's some things that we take away from King that I think applies here today, are just a couple things. First of all, King didn't wait until, quote unquote, he made it, or until he grew up to become an activist. I think it was, there were 5 lynchings in Georgia, and one of which was a World War II veteran, black man, who was lynched for trying to vote. One of the other 4 was a black woman that was 7 months pregnant. Dr. King at that time was a 17-year-old Morehouse student who wrote a letter to the editor to talk about African Americans deserving equal protection, equal benefits and rights as all Americans. And I say that here to say that leadership doesn't start when you get to a certain age. Mm-hmm. Leadership starts when you decide that you don't like the environment you live in, and you decide that you're going to change it. And Dr. King did that at 17. The other thing I think is quite fitting, especially for a Harvard conversation, where I know that many of you are going to go off and do a bunch of great things, and what goes with going off and doing a bunch of great things is making the money to go along with it, is that Dr. King died in Memphis, Tennessee, fighting for sanitation workers, and that he had determined that he would fight for people that were less fortunate, and that everyone who worked should get, 1, a living wage, but 2, be able to work with dignity and in a safe place. But I say that because Dr. King was not born into a poor family. Dr. King's family was okay. And then Dr. King was not poor, but he never forgot the obligation to reach back and either help others or fight for those that are less fortunate. So yesterday, we celebrated the 50th anniversary in Statutory Hall in the House of Representatives with the Speaker, John Lewis, Leader Pelosi, and other members of Congress and our guests. But on that day, we have an executive order from the president saying that we should look at all of the entitlement programs or social benefit programs like SNAP and like welfare, whatever derogatory word you want to call it, but let's just call it what it is, food stamps, welfare, and all of those things, that he wanted a bottom-up analysis. And one of Dr. King's most appropriate quotes was that for all of you people who say everybody needs to lift themselves up by their bootstraps, that doesn't apply to the person who doesn't have boots. And that is the context, I think, that is most appropriate on the 50th anniversary of King's assassination, that we are still fighting for some of those basic rights. And I'll end with this. And I don't know why it affects me so much, but when I'm home and I still live maybe 5 blocks from where I was born and raised. Now, I've been through 4 houses, but they've all been within a 1.5 mile radius. I keep moving up, but I don't move far.
Come on, Jim. Jim.
But what I'll tell you is that I passed the bus stop, and I count how fortunate I am, because I see, especially older black women and black men that are going work in the hotels or the hospitality industry in New Orleans, getting on the bus to go to work. And I know that they are going to put in a more physically demanding day's work than I am. But I also know that they're going to get far less than what they deserve for doing that and keeping our tourism industry booming and all those other things. And I think about them, but I also think about their children and what they deserve and whether they're going to get every opportunity they deserve, because if you're older black women, you're working 2 jobs to make what a man makes, and we want to understand why her kid is not learning at the same level as everybody else, because she's working 2 jobs. She's not home to help with homework. So all of those things together, and I'm glad I'm in a place that is conscious enough to understand that there are very specific challenges in the African American community, and for all those smart physics types, I was not one of them. But there was one concept I did understand, and that was if there was a boulder rolling down a hill, the only way you stop that boulder from rolling down the hill is to apply opposite and equal force. And if we are going to fix the effects of hundreds of years of racism and discrimination, then you have to apply an opposite and equal force. And that is a place that I want to help this country get to, because we all celebrate King now. But when King was protesting and marching, people call him a race baiter, and 60% of the country thought he was doing the wrong thing. And that, I think, is the unfortunate part then, but hopefully we learn from it now, so that when we see Black Lives Matter and everybody else, or whether you're an SOB football player taking a knee, the country I want to live in is a country where everybody wants to stand for the national anthem, not where everybody's mandated to stand for the national anthem. So with that, Symone.
You all give it up for Congressman Cedric Richmond, Chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm so happy you came to be here with us today. I'm so happy I'm here with you and not in handcuffs at the airport. That's another story. Yes.
I've been there before. I just want you to know that.
Haven't we all, flying while black?
Not at the airport, though. It's just, mine's a much longer story.
No amount of status or notoriety erases the color of your skin. So you talked a lot about the 50. First of all, you stole some of my questions. I asked you what you wanted to talk about when we went to lunch, and you didn't tell me none of this. So I'd just like to throw that out there.
Malcolm started it.
Thank you, Malcolm. So you talked about the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's assassination, and when Dr. King died, he was, in fact, waging the Poor People's Campaign. He was fighting to address what we refer to as economic inequality, what I would like to call economic equity, because, we can have a separate conversation about that. But 50 years later, we are still waging many of the same battles. And on this 50th anniversary, there have been a lot of speeches, and a lot of different people have said something. But I'd like to bring you to some more of the controversial comments, if we may. My former boss was in, I believe it was Jackson, Mississippi, with the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi during the 50th anniversary of the celebration. And he made remarks about Dr. King and his legacy. He also made remarks about our first African-American president, President Obama, and the Democratic Party. So one, I'd like to ask you what you think about those remarks in the context of the King holiday, and do you agree or disagree with Bernie Sanders? Got my Oprah hat on, y'all.
Well, let me tell you this. The facts are the facts.
And what are the facts?
While President Obama was in office, we lost over 1,000 legislative seats around the country. So I think Bernie was absolutely correct when he said that. Bernie ran into a problem when he described the first African-American president as charismatic in the first sentence, but then he doubled back in the second sentence to say very intelligent and other things. I just wish he would have finished the thought or the facts. We lost 1,000 seats because it was the backlash of electing the country's first African-American president. And I want to be very clear here. That backlash didn't just come from white Republicans. That backlash came from white Democrats too. And as much as we want to be in a post-racial society, we're not. And I think that a lot of people, far too many people, retreated to their corner on their identity politics. And I think some people are really threatened where their significance in the world and their standing will go. Mm-hmm. So that's Democrats and Republicans who are seeing a browner America, a younger America, and one that is not dominated by just a small group of power brokers anymore. And I think that added to the backlash. Do I think that it was some neglect on President Obama and something he did? I don't. Do I think that we could have focused more on the legislative races? Probably, but the guy was a little bit busy trying to pass the Affordable Care Act, which I think is going to go down in history as one of the best things that's ever happened in this country. So I would not put a lot of blame on the president, but Bernie should have just finished the sentence that, and if he wanted to go deeper, every significant African-American progress in this country was followed by a fierce black backlash. So whether it's Reconstruction, whether it's Jim Crow or any of those things, when we made significant gains in this country, we've always faced a backlash. So the 1,000 seats doesn't surprise me, but I just don't want people to think that, everyone, racist Republicans run somewhere. No, it was some people with racial challenges from both parties.
From both parties. And so talk to me a little bit about the Democratic Party. We're in an interesting place, one could argue. We are on the cusp of potentially taking back the House in these midterm elections, as my predictions would be. But we're in a very interesting place when we're talking about issues and values and who is in leadership, who's not in leadership. Are we talking about white working class voters? Are we talking about identity politics, which I believe is, in fact, a false choice? But I teach a study group here at the Institute of Politics about the future of the Democratic Party. So what would be your quick snapshot analysis of the future of the Democratic Party, particularly when we talk about black political leadership in the 21st century?
Well, if this was sports, I'd compare the Democrats to the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl 2 years ago when they blew that big lead. Closer to home and more painful, I'd compare them to the Saints and us not going to the Super Bowl this year when the guy tackled somebody, but it was not the person with the ball. We have a unique ability to make easy things hard and the ability to blow it. And I think right now, if you ask me where we are as a country and as a party and the midterm elections, then I think we're dribbling down the court with 10 seconds left, and all we have to do is make a layup to win. Mm-hmm. But I think we're going to do something crazy like try to do a 360 slam dunk between our legs and all this other stuff when all we have to do is make a layup. So the question becomes, what's the layup? Let's just talk to the American people about what they believe in and the challenges they're facing. So, and those challenges are really trying to make ends meet, trying to provide for a family, trying to take care either a parent or a grandparent, trying to put a kid through school and make sure that he or she can reach their full potential. That's what people are talking about. People are talking about economics. People are talking about their families. People are talking about whether they can afford to put their parents either in a home or whether they can stay with them, what to do, why are we not doing enough Alzheimer's research or cancer research. That's what's hitting people. But we as Democrats, you know, we get stuck on, you know, oh, we want the women's vote. Let's talk about equal pay. We want the women's vote. Let's talk about pro-choice. Women care about a lot more than just those two things. And
we
I think
care about the economy. Newsflash.
Absolutely.
So do black people.
Wait, look, we care about paying the bills. You know, some of us more than others. You know, pull my credit.
I don't know if that's shade. I'm not sure.
No.
My bill's paid. And my taxes.
I pay mine when I get around to it. So
well, I'm gonna send you my assistant.
But the point is that most people out there are trying to make their household work, trying to make their neighborhood a better place. And if everybody did that, then consequently the cities and country would be a better place. But we think that we can talk to voters on singular issues, and it's just not the case. I mean, may have been a case a long time ago, and it's just not now. And I think that Democrats missed that. And as far as this whole question about we're not talking to white men in the Rust Belt and whatever, the real question is we're not talking to people who get a paycheck. And that's wherever they live. It could be New Mexico, New Orleans, New York, or New Jersey. It doesn't matter. If you get a paycheck, it's probably not what it should be. And that, I think, is the conversation. I think Democrats, we have a tendency to just take the easy way out instead of the thoughtful way, and just being honest with people that, you know, we're not going to fix it overnight, but at least we're going to make an effort to do some common sense things to make people's life better. And I think if we do that, we'll get there. But, you know, some of us are running, you know, people are running around running for speaker and leader and all of those things on both the House and Senate side. And the main thing is, you know, you have to win first. So
come on now, win the election. Well, hopefully the Democratic Party makes that layup. I see you got your J's on today. Yeah, he has his J's on. And so I want to talk to you. You are the youngest chair to ever chair the Congressional Black Caucus. And the Congressional Black Caucus is now the largest congressional caucus in history. So talk to me, one, about being the youngest chair of an entity such as the Congressional Black Caucus. But two, I want you to talk about y'all have had a pretty, in my opinion, a historic year. Y'all have done some things that you have not done before. I was very happy to see the Congressional Black Caucus not sitting on the sidelines, but actively out there in the press and activating and doing things, particularly at the State of the Union. So talk to me a little bit about that and the relevance, because people will ask, and I think it's an offensive question, but you know, I'm just here to ask the questions to be the moderator. So, you know, no opinions on this side today, but what is, in fact, the relevance of the Congressional Black Caucus in 2018? But talk to me about your young people chairmanship, because you are honorary millennial.
Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I checked with the caucus before I made that known.
I'm glad. Let me just say that it really is an honor to be chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and being right in that age that I am, it's a benefit.
And wait, how old are you, for the people that don't know?
None of your business. That's what Wikipedia is for.
We can Google it.
Right.
Wikipedia is not a reputable source.
Well, I think it has my birthday right. How about that? But I was born in 73. I stopped counting how many years. So let me tell you this. You know, the age, I think, is important because I get to talk to a whole bunch of people and automatically get some credibility that I normally wouldn't have, and I don't know if it's just or not. But being able to, when I need to talk to John Lewis and Jim Clyburn, Maxine Waters, and all these people who have been there, there's no substitute for institutional knowledge and life experiences. So I'm right at that stage where I benefit from all of their life experiences, but I can also make it relate. And the best example is when I go out and I talk to, whether I'm at a church or whether I'm at a youth group or one of those, when I start talking about everybody has a role to play. And the best example is one of the sit-ins in South Carolina where Jim Clyburn and others were at a lunch counter protesting, and they were arrested. And so I don't remember the other guy's name, but he keeps complaining to Jim, hey man, we're in jail, but Mr. Williams not in jail. Why Mr. Williams never come to jail and we always go to jail? So it goes on for like an hour or two, and finally Jim says, look, everybody has a role. We get arrested, but Mr. Williams is the one who raises the bail money so that we can get out. Just so happens, he said, well, what does Mr. Williams look like? And he described me. He said, well, that surely looks like Mr. Williams in that cell 2 cells down. So they wind up staying in a week because Mr. Williams was in jail as opposed to being out raising the bail money because that was his role. So some people's role is going to be to educate. Some people's role will be to legislate, and some people's role will be to agitate. But we just have to know that all the roles are just as important, and we have to be on the same page. So being the young chair, I bring a different perspective than my older colleagues. They bring the institutional knowledge and the life experiences that I don't necessarily have. So I think it's a good fit. But our 48 members, we're known as the conscience of the Congress. But I would put our intellectual capacity up against anybody. And if you look at the spending bill, which is, I think, a great example, and our president, who has a tendency to watch news, and Fox is probably watching, let me be clear. We won in this spending bill, which is why they woke up the next day and say, hey, how did this happen? We want to take some of the money back. No, we just beat you. As a caucus, for example, we added $600 million to Head Start. They wanted to cut Pell Grants or get rid of programs like CDBG, and we plussed them up billions of dollars. So the talent within the caucus is very, very special. But we also know that we have to create a bench. And I'm not talking about a bench that will get in a game with 2 seconds left when you're up by 50 points. I'm talking about in key moments when you need them to have them. And so if you look at the Congressional Black Caucus Institute's boot camp, we bring in 50 or 60 people from around the country every year, all expenses paid, and we train them in public service.
So what do you say to the people that say the CBC ain't relevant anymore, or the CBC members need to move out the way for these young people?
Well,
even though, because you're an honorary millennial, so they probably not talking about you.
I would tell them the fact that Head Start is there, the fact that we brought summer Pell Grants back, the fact that we plussed up money to HBCUs and capital finance. And look, I know the whole thing. Look, I was a Janet Jackson fan. What have you done for me lately? But if you look at the spending bill, there are billions with the B of reasons why the Black Caucus is still relevant and why we're so important, and what we have done lately, which is why you will see the Republicans probably bring a bill to rescind about $60 billion, and that $60 billion will be targeted at the things that we won on. And I think we'll beat it back. So when you start talking about what we've done lately, you only have to go
check the
that
bill.
far.
You gonna tell them check the bill?
Just read the bill.
We're gonna take some questions from the crowd. So if you'd like to ask a question, there are various microphones throughout the room. So please take a lineup. I'm gonna ask another question. I want to talk specifically. I want to take you back to the State of the Union address. The CBC members. There was chatter that that the CBC was going to boycott the President Trump's State of the Union. There was chatter that the CBC was going to walk out. But what we saw were many members of the CBC and allied or accomplices, because I don't want any more allies, I want accomplices because they in there with you. We saw folks wearing kente cloth. And then when you pan to the CBC section, when Donald Trump was talking about the black unemployment rate, y'all were sitting there very stoic, unmoved and unimpressed. So I'd like to ask you about that moment. Why the kente cloth? Why attend the State of the Union? There are people that say that you shouldn't have attended. There are people that say you shouldn't have sat there and wore the kente cloth. So tell us about the kente cloth. Why attend the State of the Union? What do you say to your critics?
Well, I'll say a couple things. Some chose to boycott. Some chose to go. But we did it together because we all play different roles. And some didn't think that the president deserved the honor of them being there. And I will tell you, I was in a caucus meeting. Don McKeacham from Virginia stood up and said, I was raised a different way. my father told me, you stare down racism. And he said, I'm 6'4" and I'm black, and I want to stand up and I want him to see me because I will stare down racism. And so people took different paths. And then we had the shithole comments about Africa. And if you listen to James Weldon Johnson's poem made into a song, which is the Negro National Anthem, it ends in, we're going to be true to our God and true to our native land. And you just called our native land a shithole country, which was really designed to pit our Hispanic brothers and sisters against African Americans, because all he wanted to do was get the Dreamers against people who come on diversity visas. That's all he wanted. The policy of it, he didn't care, but he wanted to do that. So what we decided is that we would stare down, but to show unity to and send a message to our people who live in Africa or El Salvador or the places he described, Haiti, he described as shithole countries. We wanted to make sure that they understood that he was not speaking for America. He was speaking for himself. So that's where the Kente Clause came from. And the other part is, we didn't stand because there was nothing to stand for. The truth is, even if he said something we agreed with, he is truth challenged. So we don't necessarily believe.
Or I call him a liar, but you're the congressman, so go ahead.
So we don't necessarily believe him. And then the comment about African-American unemployment being the lowest it's ever been, we knew that line was coming. But we're not talking about, first of all, he doesn't get credit for it, one. That decline was started under President Obama, and he was the beneficiary of President Obama's strategy and hard work on that. But the second part of it is, during slavery, we were at full employment. Sharecropping, we were at full.
You better speak the truth.
No,
say it again, because during slavery, we did have jobs. I guess that's what the conservatives like to say.
But sharecropping, we had jobs, but the harder you work, the more you owe. And the fact is that African American unemployment is still double that of their white counterparts.
Exactly.
But two, if you just look at wages around the country, I wouldn't stand for any measure of unemployment. Even during President Obama's years, where he had, we lost 1.5 million jobs the 2 months before he took office, and he did an incredible job of bringing it down. But the wages are still far too low. It's not a living wage. So there's nothing to applaud that a whole bunch of people are going to work for a job they can't feed their family on. So it had a lot to do with the fact that he was singling out African American unemployment like we were going to get up and dance and do all this other stuff because he takes credit for it. But the truth is, it was nothing to applaud. It's still double that of our white counterparts, and so many people are still underemployed, and the wages are crap. So no, we were not going to applaud, and we got beat up by Fox News, which is, it is what it is. But as I walked through the airport on the way home, the African American people and our non-African Americans, but people of like kind, not all of like color, they were proud of the moment. We didn't run.
I was proud of y'all.
And we took it serious. So. Look, I met with the guy, so,
well, we're going to take some questions from the crowd. We are going to take some questions. So there are 2 microphones on the floor and 2 up top, and I am taking questions and not soliloquies. So please tell us, the press secretary and me will cut you off. So please tell us your name and what concentration or program you're in.
Hello, my name is DeMarquin Johnson. I'm an MPP1 here at the Kennedy School. And I want to first start by saying thank you for being here. It is truly an honor to have you participate in the Black Policy Conference and have this event. My question is related to your relationship with your counterparts, the Republicans. Do you see room for bipartisan legislation and agreement with Trump and other Republicans? And how do you work past the fundamental views that Republicans have that are opposed to the interests of the Black community?
Well, let me just say this. Yes, I'm willing to work with the Republicans. First of all, we're not in charge, so we don't really have a choice. Ask me that question in January, and then I'll probably give you a different answer. When we're in charge, I think bipartisanship is probably overrated. Because I think there's some real things that we have to do, no matter if we can get their buy-in or not. When you start talking about criminal justice reform, when you start talking about a living wage, when you start talking about protecting health care for all, when you start talking about community policing and police reform, those things are so important. I don't care if they buy into it or not. We just have to do it. But there are some things that I think we could work together on. But we get so caught up on sound bites that I think that it's a barrier. And there are some well-meaning people on the other side, but their life experiences and mine are different, and how we get to the answer or the conclusion we want differs. And that's the hard part. And the one that is probably the most glaring example is that I don't think there's any Democrat or Republican or any person in this room or in this country that is pro-abortion. We would all like the number of abortions to be 0. But as Democrats, we believe that we give the woman a right to choose, but that we create supportive networks of prenatal care and adoption services and foster care and great education and equal pay, all of those things that would make a woman that much less likely to choose that alternative. We don't believe that you can say it's illegal and it's going to stop. Rich people will leave the country and go have them. Poor people will go in a back alley and risk their lives in order to do it. But by the way, what they will never say is that abortion's at an all-time low, because some of the things we're doing is accomplishing the goal of 0. So I don't have a problem working with them. But the bigger thing is I'm not going to slow down what I need to accomplish to wait on them. So to the extent that we're not in control, and the thing that I go around the country now saying that I think is most important is that elections have consequences. And when you lose, you lose. I'd love to be renewing the Voting Rights Act and doing criminal justice reform. But hey, we lost. We lost the Senate, we don't have the House, and we surely don't have the White House. So we have to take whatever incremental gains we can get. But the main goal is, what we really need to do is get back into power so that we can accomplish those things that we really need to.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question up top.
Hey, Symone. Congressman, I have a question for you about the two-party system. My question is, every other group, gays, Latinos, older people, seniors, everybody has to fight for their vote. When it comes to the African American vote, everybody knows the way we're going to vote. It's Democrat. Now, we could argue whether that's understandable or not. The question I have is it good for the African American community that we are so monolithically one way? And do you see an opportunity where the Republican Party may change and outreach to our community?
That's a good question, and let me answer it this way. I don't think we're monolithic, but I think that our life experiences, we believe what we believe, and we were raised a certain way. And we were raised the way that you treat everybody with dignity and respect. You help people when they need it. You know, my grandmother was very firm in the fact that if you see somebody that's hungry, try to get them some food. And by the way, who cares if you call it food stamps? If you see somebody that's homeless, try to get them some housing. Who cares if you call it affordable housing? If you see somebody that's sick, try to get them to a doctor. Who cares if you call it Obamacare? Those things unite African Americans. And it just so happens that there's only one party that believes in that. So the fact that so many African Americans are Dems, I don't think it's because we have some love and affection for the Democratic Party. I think that we see our values shaped in the Democratic Party. But to some extent, the first part of your question is not entirely accurate, because 13% of African American males voted for Donald Trump. Don't ask me why, but they did. And then if you really want to take a deep dive, if you look at Wisconsin, you look at Michigan, you look at Florida, we lost those states because many African Americans actually voted for the third party candidate, and that was the difference between Trump and Hillary. So it's a great question, and we get it all the time, but I really believe it's because we find our values shaped in the Democratic Party right now. So if you look at the Republican Party and you just look at their last actions, it is we passed a tax break, $1.4 trillion. We passed a tax break, $1.4 trillion, for primarily corporations in the top 1%. And that $1.4 trillion, one, it would have paid for your candidate's free college tuition plan, which was
Making public colleges and universities tuition free.
Which was only $800 billion. And then we still would have had almost $700 billion to put in the infrastructure and other things. But we did it in a tax break. And to pay for it now, they're coming back saying, we're going to cut entitlements. Well, Social Security is not an entitlement. People paid into it their whole life. And the other things are just the right thing to do. So I just think that, for the most part, we follow our values, and our values right now are defended and advocated by the Democratic Party. And if that changes, I would hope that our affiliation and our loyalty changes. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Take a question right here.
Hi, my name is Charles, a student here at the Kennedy School. Thank you, Congressman, for being here. My question is that you mentioned educate, legislate, and agitate. And would you have any examples of legislations that you would love to legislate, any new policies, new areas to move, but that you need more agitation, more people standing up and saying we need to move in this direction for it to be able to be possible in Congress?
Well, I'll just give you the latest example, which is our Parkland students who have created a movement around sensible gun regulations. And so that legislation would be, some of it's just low-hanging common sense fruit, like the Charleston loophole, which Dylan Ruth, or whatever his name was, I didn't think it was Dylan Ruth, went to Mother Emanuel Church and killed 9 African Americans while they were at Bible study. It was a loophole. If your background check doesn't come back in 72 hours and 2 minutes, you get to buy a gun. And that's what he did. His background check eventually came back, and he failed his background check, and they said, hey, this guy should not have a gun. We shouldn't have that loophole. If it takes another day, then that's what it is. I'm sorry about this, Symone, but if TSA holds you up another 30 minutes, so be it. But you have to get on a plane.
How about we need TSA reform? Okay?
We got you covered.
Thank you. Y'all heard it here first.
You're not the only person to be singled out and wrongly treated. But the major point is that even in great countries with a bunch of rights, there's sacrifices that go with those rights. If you want to fly, you're going through TSA. And if you want a gun, you're going to go through a background check. And we shouldn't have a loophole that lets people who are not qualified get a gun just because it came back too slow. The gun show loophole, where 2 private citizens can sell a gun to somebody without even having to check their background. They may have a protective order. They may be a person who right now there's a woman or man that's married to them saying that if they get a gun, I'm going to die. And the judge says, stay away from her. They have a stay away order. They should not be able to buy a gun. Those things are sensible. Not to mention 18, 19, 20, and 21-year-old, if anybody, should not have access to long guns, which, by the way, I believe are weapons of mass destruction. So the Parkland students are the ones doing the agitation, and they're doing a wonderful job of it. In fact, they're so good that our counterparts like to say that they're being coached to acting. What they are some conscientious young people who have decided enough is enough, and we want to act. So that's probably the best example, but go 50 years back to King, and it's the same thing, whether it's the Poor People's Campaign and a living wage or minimum wage and all of those things, it's been consistent.
Thank you.
We have a question up top.
Hi, my name is Rosie. I'm a second-year MPP student. I heard you mention building the bench of the Congressional Black Caucus and staring racism in the face. And I remember my orientation week. I'm a white student, and I came to HKS in my class of 240. I realized that there were 2 Black American women in my class.
What year are you?
I'm a second-year MPP. And so I'm wondering, I think there are a lot who share those values, but wondering what you would want to see from institutions like HKS and from us to help make those more of a reality.
Well,
now, I want you to know this is unheard of, because at Harvard they usually snap to not be disruptive. But clearly this is, and to add some context, this is something students, not just in the Kennedy School, but especially in the Kennedy School, have been pushing for, and many, Shaniqua being one of them. So what would you say to
Let,
Harvard?
let me just say this, and I'll say it to you and the Harvard family and to other families. With great accomplishment, great reputation, and all the value that Harvard offers, I think that they have a equal obligation to go above and beyond. And part of it is inherent, or, not inherent, but it's a non-intentional bias. And I'll be honest, I know I'm on TV and all this stuff, but when I interview people to work in my office, we'll start a conversation with the person I'm interviewing, and if we stray any, we might talk football. Well, a black kid is going to talk SWAC football. White kid's going to talk SEC. Well, I don't care about the SEC. If we start talking about music, if he's from New Orleans, he might mention Juvenile and Lil Wayne. That's right up my alley. If he mentions, Garth Brooks or Taylor Swift, I don't really listen to that. Not condemning the music, but that's just not what I listen to in my car. And then all of a sudden I find I have a real connection with this person and I don't connect with this person. But it's not that one's more qualified than the other, it's just a natural connection. And sometimes I will find myself saying, let me look at my office. Let me look at the makeup of my office, and I need to make sure it reflects either my district or the country, and I need to make sure I'm giving everybody a chance. So when you start talking about schools like Harvard, and it applies to Morehouse too in this sense, if I'm just looking for, and you have to be very careful, it's okay to be an elite school, but you don't want to be a school of the elite. And that is a very important distinction, because you can find talent anywhere. You can take the diamond in the rough, and all of a sudden you create a class that looks like the country, and you mold them all, and they go off and do great things. But if you're only taking the top and without diversity, then that just is not, I don't think it's beneficial to the country. I don't think it's beneficial to the school. I don't think it's beneficial to the class, because I think with diversity of thought, diversity of people, you learn a lot more and you build a better product. So to the extent that Harvard and all of the schools are going backwards in terms of diversity, that's a real concern. And since this institution is the Morehouse of the North, I think that it has an obligation to ensure that its legacy continues, because we need Harvard. We need all of the Harvards of the world, but we need a product coming out of those that's a superior student, but a person that has a superior conscience, and one that will leave trying to change the world because of what they learned.
Thank you. We will take 2 more questions. I have a question at the top.
My name is CJ Jackson, and I'm interested in the question of impeachment. If we find ourselves in a world in which House Democrats take the House, do you think, A, that they would move for impeachment, and importantly, do you think it would actually be a good move, assuming we don't also control the Senate?
Now, I'd like to know, did you come here and make some news tonight? I just want to know.
Well,
I'm your friend.
I'm not going to make news here. There are those that really want to impeach the president, and I think that there are impeachable grounds. However, if I had to prioritize what's important, the most important thing is taking back the House. And then, because all of the bad policy we can focus on. But the other thing I want to stress here, and I know that you all are at Harvard, so you all didn't live my life experience, so many of you will not know what 3-card monte is. But 3-card monte is that card game where you have a ball and then you have 3 cards and you move the cards and you try to distract people where the ball is, and then you gamble and you bet on whether the person can figure out where the ball is. But, it was a street hustling game. The president's the best 3-card monte player I've seen in my lifetime. So while he distracts us, whether it is because something happened in the Russia probe, so he goes to Alabama that doesn't have a professional football team and says that NFL players who take a knee are SOBs, now all of a sudden we're off defending patriotism and taking a knee and SOBs, and he's rolling back rules on whether people who earn tips can keep them or not. I mean, it's whack-a-mole, for lack of a better description. So there are those who want impeachment, and I support them. But for me, the priority is first taking back the House, because if you don't take back the House, any talk of impeachment is just an exercise in futility. So I'm not into that. Moral victories is not my thing. I was a Little League coach my whole life, and I told my kids, I said, look, doesn't matter whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And kid looked at me and said, why do they keep score? So I clearly understand I want to win. And if you look at the congressional baseball game, you're going to understand that I really want to win, and I usually do. So, especially when you're playing Republicans. So, sorry about that. So the key is, I think there are a bunch of things, but first and most importantly is take back the House so we can enact legislation that's important. Because if you do what you need to do in the House and the Senate, the White House becomes a little less relevant, except I think it's very important about our standing around the world. And as we talk to world leaders, our standing is going down and going down fast. So impeachments are real, it's legitimate. However, it would not be at the top of my list. And by the way, if you impeach him, it's not like we're about to get some minority-loving vice president that's going to become president. You're going to get Pence and all of his all of the biases that come with him. So, it's all relative. So, you may get a more polished, kinder guy, but does the philosophy change much? I would say no, because he hasn't said a word that's opposite Trump since he's been elected. So,
thank you. We will take our last question. Shaniqua.
Hello. So you just mentioned, or we're talking about winning back the House, and there's been a lot of conversation around entities like the DNC not really investing in black candidates. So I would just love to hear your thoughts on that. And outside of that, if they're not going to do it, what can we do as supporters of black candidates to get them into office?
What y'all gonna do, Mr. Chairman?
I thought you were on the DNC or something.
Pardon me? I am thank you, many thanks to Chairman Perez of the Democratic National Committee. I am an at-large member of the Democratic National Committee, and I am raising a stink about this, but to be clear, it is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee that does the recruitment of candidates for a midterm election.
Well,
and that has been heavily criticized.
There's an old blues song.
Well, talk to me about the song. Come on, my elders.
That says, if you're going to tell it all.
Tell it all.
Now, you are a member of the DNC. I am not. But
you are, in fact, an elected official and the chairman of the largest Congressional Caucus. One could argue you may have a little bit more of an agitation available to you than I do. I'm supposed to go in the room. So what you gonna do?
Well, let me tell you this, and I don't think it's unique to the DNC. In fact, I'm gonna get so far off of the DNC, and I will say that they have a lot of work to do. In fact, it's awful. We look at politics as just changing the landscape of people's lives, but you also have to look at it as its own economic engine. The presidential campaign, you spent almost $1 billion, and if you mean to tell me you only spent 2% with African Americans, that's embarrassing, it's insulting. It's disgraceful and all of those things. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, it's just awful. And for our Democrats, it's awful. For our DCCC, it's getting better. We've doubled the number, but if you're doubling the number from 1 to 2, you haven't really moved the ball, although I think we've doubled it more than just 100%. And for the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, it's the same thing. But I think the question is a bigger question for me, and that is, oftentimes, as African Americans, we align ourselves with a whole bunch of people that really want to help us, especially our liberal white friends. But the key is, don't help us in spite of ourselves. We actually can contribute to the conversation and charting the path that we want and that we know the answers that our communities have. So we need to be a part of the decision making. So when you start looking at the DNC and the DCCC and the DSCC, when you start talking about divvying up contracts, hiring consultants and all of those things, we're not at the decision-making table like we should. And if you get the butt kicking like we've received in the presidential race, in the House races over the last couple of years, then, my advice to Mr. Perez when he came in to Tom was, put the janitors in one room, then bring the security guards and put them in one room, and then fire everybody else in the building. Because we lost. And losing, you see it in sports. When you lose and you come in almost last, you clean house. And that's what I would prefer to see. But what we have to just be more mindful of is reminding our friends who are of like mind that, hey, we bring a lot to the party and we should be in the decision making. So in the terms of them and the financial aspects of campaigns, we're doing an awful job. We're doing a little bit better job in candidate recruitment. We have a couple stars out there that I think will do very well. I think the Black Caucus will grow from 48 to somewhere around 52, 53, or 54.
Okay.
But look, I'll tell you like I told the president when we went meet with him. At that time, we were 49 members. We represent 78 million Americans. But by the way, only 17 million of those 78 are African Americans. Now, the president asked, well, what's the rest? I was like, Martians? I don't know. Who does that? But that's a whole nother story.
That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, that meeting is a whole different story. But short answer is Democrats have to do better. And Republicans are at zero, but Democrats, we should not hold ourselves to those standards. We should hold ourselves to a very high standard. Well, look, if you want to support a candidate, if you can't volunteer, I hate to say it, you have to give money. And that's why I started with King and where he was with his station of life, fighting for sanitation workers, is that, look, some of you all are going to go get in some jobs that demand all of your time and your attention, but it doesn't demand all your money. And sometimes you have to put your money where your mouth is. So if you find somebody who believes in what you believe in, then you have to help them. This political game has changed so much since Citizens United that people can buy a campaign, people can buy influence, and if regular people don't stand up and pool their resources together, then we're going to continue to lose because the elite will write big checks. And so when you see one individual that will write $100 million check to a campaign organization, what is that about? You know how many normal people it takes to match that 100 million that one person writes? So that's why I say we have to get involved. And even if it's given $5 or $7, but remember, that is how the Obama movement started, and it started one person at a time. So we just have to do that. And to the extent that we don't like what the parties are doing, Democrat or Republican, we have to voice it. Because the one thing about politics is that the squeaky wheel is going to always get the oil. And we can't give friends passes just because they're passes. So don't give the Democratic Party a pass just because we share values. And that's important. And the other thing I'll close with is that for African Americans, I think we have to recalibrate how we judge our alliances. And just because you're of my color doesn't mean you're of my kind. And just because you're of my kind doesn't necessarily mean you'll be of my color. Best example is Philadelphia, Mississippi, back in the Civil Rights Movement, when Goodman, Cheney, and Swerner were registering people to vote. They were all lynched and killed. But it was we had a black man, we had a Jewish man, we had diversity there in race and religion and ethnicity, but we didn't have diversity in thought. And so that to me is key, because if you just start saying that all black people think alike or we're all on the same page, I could give you some people I'm not on the same page with. I can start pointing to specific addresses around the Capitol. I mean, if you look around at the Supreme Court or the Department of Housing and Urban Development,
Now. I have one more question.
But I didn't say any names.
I know.
I'm good.
You know what? You're good. I have one more question. You done came up here to Harvard to be with us today. You're real close to New Hampshire, so I just have to ask, because it seems like it's happening to everybody. Are you running for president in 2020? It seems like everybody's running for president, so I just like to get you on the record right now to find out if you are, in fact, one of the 152,662 candidates that'll be running for president.
You know how if you're running for president, you're supposed to say, no, I'm not running for president, but you're really running for president? Hell no, I'm not running for president.
You all give it up for Congressman Cedric Richmond, the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus. Thank you for joining us for our opening session at the Harvard Kennedy School Black Policy Conference. I consider you a mentor and a friend. I appreciate you, and we thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'll get a shout out to the people from Louisiana, New Orleans, and Baton Rouge, and the river parishes that are watching. Who that?
Who that? All right. Who it ain't? Shaniqua.
And just very quickly before we end, to show our appreciation from the planners of the Black Policy Conference, we wanted to present you with this gift.
Let me see. Did they put your name on it?
You have to pay to see.
Yeah, I'd also like to invite the other members of the Black Policy Conference planning team to take a photo really quick on stage. So if everybody can come up really quick.
Thank y'all for joining us today.
Thank you all.
And for everyone else, there is a reception taking place in Nye. And tomorrow. Oh, sorry. So for those of you who haven't already registered for the conference, you can go online and still register online, or you can come tomorrow morning. For those of you who already have registered, you can check in tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. And we're going to get started with our keynote at 8:30. Professor Muhammad's going to be our keynote tomorrow morning, so it'll be a great conversation. Also, and last thing, and then I will let everyone go. We were really fortunate enough to get some books donated. Donna Brazil's book, Hacks, donated. So for the people who get here on time, we will give you a free book. Yeah, so thanks.